So first things first, can you hear me? Great. Okay, this is a huge relief. We can't do very much if we can't listen to each other. So thank you so much, Sachin, for that introduction. And it's just wonderful to follow, people have gone before me because my eyes can't stop shining. But like Sachin says, none of this happens without the people, not just the leaders. It's not just about the likes of Vivek, Renuji, and everyone else who came before us today, but the vast networks of people, whether those are students, community leaders, who are all working collaboratively inside the government, outside, in business, everywhere to sort of drive this change. So one of the, everyone can see my, see the presentation?
Yes, Supriya, we can see the presentation.
Okay, great. So this brings us to the heart of the question, right? If we are to do and think about all these solutions that we've been talking about through the day, at the core is the humans behind it, and how can we enable the human capacities that are needed for innovation at all levels? We're talking about it inside the government, we're talking about it outside in the business, social sector, at the community level, within the university, but all at scale. We have to urgently apply our mind to think about this question, because every public good we create, every shared infrastructure we might create, all the data in the world will not be taken up or adopted unless we have the human capacities to be able to solve for them. What might these capacities be? These are just illustrative, but some of the things that are critical in actually building that culture of innovation is first the sense of agency. The ability in each of us to think this is our responsibility to solve and have the self-permission to do it. The awareness to know, where things stand right now in the world, what are the motivations of different actors, how might we, make our solution more relevant. Empathy, so that it's designed for user centricity and effectiveness. Creativity, so that we can think beyond current constraints and limits. Ability to constantly listen to very often conflicting agendas, that might be there, so that we can think about solutions. Collaborate with each other, lead, make interdisciplinary connections. Technology has been one big dimension of what we are seeing, the connect of law and technology, but there are many other fields that become critical in us being able to innovate. And agility, because the world is changing quickly. We do face this crisis. The last 3 years has shown us that a lot. The ability to also constantly innovate quickly and adapt to new environments that we might be operating in. Today, what I thought I'd do is we present a few ideas. This is blue sky thinking because this is a brainstorming session. A few ideas that might give us a clue in the direction that we should be thinking about. They're all illustrative and not in any ways exhaustive, but to act as a starting point for us to sort of deep dive into it. I'm not presenting any solutions, but more the direction of our thinking. So the first thing that, something that I have really learned over time is what we need to enable is transformative learning at scale. Now, what I mean by that is we can't really cause paradigm shifts. We're talking about changing the system and really talking about radical shift if we don't ourselves change who we are at an intrinsic way. Often we talk about, we need to train people with this skill or this one capacity. They need to learn how to use AI, or they need to learn how to use, entrepreneurial skills can be taught. But actually beyond that, there is a deeper shift that needs to happen. Talking about it in terms of just pure skills and training is equivalent, if I had to draw a parallel in the technology space, it's like adding one more app. But just like we say we need to shift the operating system in the technology context or of our phones, similarly, even as humans, we need to change and evolve our individual, collective, mental and emotional operating system. And that means things that are all the qualities that we have spoken about. It's hard to sort of teach in, a 2-day program and say you're a certified person with leadership, but these are fundamentally changing the route from which we operate, how we see, operate and lead in the world. So the good news is a lot of this work has been happening in India and around the world on which we can build up. The Presencing Institute in the US is a very good example of having developed mechanisms to take individual and large organizations and systems in a process that actually helps us evolve our capacity to fundamentally think about problems differently and to be able to sort of operate from that space. The second potential direction we could be thinking about is creating demand for vertical literacy. Vertical literacy, I'm giving a name to all these capabilities that we're talking about as these capabilities. Sometimes we talk about it as entrepreneurial capability or leadership, but it's this capacity to truly think fundamentally differently, learn, operate as an ecosystem, not operate as a system, not thinking about this is just me and my enterprise, but to think about this as a system and to be able to lead from it. There has been a lot of work on this. I think our best bets are going to lie in creating demand for this as against saying, let's do tons of programs for training. The government's own initiative around the Atal University ranking is one example of it, right? Sometimes when you create strong rankings, it starts creating a demand for students and universities to be wanting to be number one. And by just creating those kind of incentives and those kind of signals to the world, start creating demand for skills that are currently and capabilities that are not currently prioritized at all. We found it really interesting that when we were looking at the Ministry of Education's Innovation Cell or even the Atal University ranking, while the intention is exactly, I think, what we're talking about here, currently the scope sadly misses out justice and law. You don't see many beyond the technical universities and the technical kind of innovations, them coming within the scope. So there's a kind of a low-hanging fruit there in terms of expanding that school of thinking to say, how can we create similar demand, even leveraging those tools itself and those initiatives of the government to be able to create such demand within universities and among students. Again, there is a body of work around the world in terms of what it takes to drive such institutions, create change makers institutions. So institutions that go beyond saying all you need to know is the letter of the law, you need to know corporate law, constitution law, administrative law, those are the technical skills. But beyond that, to say how to really become a change maker, how do you develop the capacity to problem solve, empathize, and lead change. So there is a whole body of work that creates a starting point for us to then think, how do we scale it, bring it to the context of justice and evolve it here. The third is a thought around establishing new age research and development institutions. There has been, I think when you look at change that's happened around the world, you realize that there's a strong correlation between skills and talent that research and development attracts and innovation. If you look at the likes of Bell Labs, Cambridge Labs, pioneering institutions, they have had a disproportionate impact in their contribution to innovation. Unfortunately, today we don't have any such research and development institution that is paying its close attention to justice issue, right? And why I'm saying new age is it needs to be fundamentally interdisciplinary by nature. It needs to have a whole set of new skills and an approach that may not be in traditional R&D institutions. So there is a whole conversation for us to think about, or an opportunity for us to brainstorm about what those institutions can look like to help us identify gaps and opportunities for actions that can innovate for justice. The Alan Turing Institution is another great example of an institution that really helps move the field forward, right? That attracts a certain talent, and it'll be really exciting for us to think about a similar thing in the Indian context. The fourth idea or direction is to create a platform for community innovators. Most of our like if you look at the country and all the examples that have been spoken before today, especially in the session around pro bono legal services, you realize that paralegals, community innovators, some of who are lawyers and some who are not, are actually already innovating. They're learning a lot of what really works on the ground. They know what the problems are, and there is a rich body of knowledge, learning, and experience that is there that really has a huge opportunity to be, to be accelerated in terms of them being able to share with each other, for them to learn from each other, share experiments that may be going underway. I do a bit of inspiration from the Diksha platform, which is currently, I think it's something that's happened over the last 2-3 years, which is that's in the field of education and looking at creating a platform for teachers in a similar way. But I understand, I'm a little distance from it, but I understand the uptake has been significant. So what might it look like if we were to create a similar platform for community innovators who are serving justice to be able to actually learn from each other, leverage resources that each other, one organization might have created resources for training or what they can use, be able to leverage each other's resources, share news announcements, and a whole set of other possibilities emerge from thinking around this direction. The fifth is nurturing a culture of innovation. This goes beyond sort of focusing on the individual innovation or the idea, but to really make justice innovation a thing, right? So far, sadly, like we think of innovation and our first associations always come with technology or in other spaces. Our association is not necessarily in the context of justice. But what would it look like if we were to be able to identify, support? I think our work, and especially Agami's work over the last 4 years, we realized there is a lot happening. It's not that it isn't. There's just a lot of scope for us to identify, support, amplify justice innovation happening, again, inside the government and outside, to sort of build a narrative around it and to sort of make it a thing that is cool, aspirational, and something that can invite a larger group of, not just young people, but a larger community around it. Again, there is this huge opportunity to leverage or find synergies with the Atal Innovation Mission, which is doing this in many ways in school, colleges, and outside. But what would it look like if we bring the justice lens strongly to it and beyond? But this is, again, not the only illustrative idea, but there are many different ways we can think about it. 6 is, what if we could come up to collaboratively launch a Justice Innovators Fund that places bold bets and invests into innovation. We know that if we see, how innovations happen and the risks into it, less as something that worked or didn't work, but as something that really helps build the foundation for how we might approach problems and design solutions from there. Again, our experience has shown us this is a bottleneck that many innovators serving justice find. The field is not as prioritized, whether it's by private equity investors or by organizations that fund social justice work. So there is an opportunity for us to, again, rally investment around it to be able to support more innovators so that they may take the leaps that they need to take to build the future we're talking about.
Supriya, you're at time.
Sure, I'll just quickly run through the last two, which is, these are more design principles, which is around how do we ensure diversity and inclusion? Because again, we know that unless there is diversity and inclusion, the nature of innovation will be deeply limited. There's a lot of data that shows that when you have diverse groups, whether that people from different socioeconomic surroundings or from different gender, social classes, etc., the nature of innovation that you're going to have is definitely going to be far more exponential. And the last direction, again, which is more a design principle, is around local innovation hubs. So how do we put local partners at the heart of innovation decision-making process, and what would it look like if we invest in local innovation hubs rather than thinking, I want to start and I want to choose this area, this place to drive innovation? What if we were to find where it's already happening? What are the bright spots where this is working? And then rally our support and resources around that. So these are just illustrative ideas in terms of how we might be able to build human capacity. And all of us, I know that many people who are not even in this room are really excited to think along with us on this. So if this is an idea that resonates, we'd be more than excited to deep dive and look at how we might realize them. Thank you, Sachin.